Knowledge media.
Knowledge as process.
Knowledge is something human beings naturally crave.
Do you know what it means to know something?
The Knowledge Media Podcast with Heather Prosak.
So I did say that when I launched Knowledge Media, I said it was going to be challenging. There was going to be opportunities to challenge your belief systems and for you to challenge other people as well. We wanted it to be this open dialogue. So I started going down a path of finding out about interesting people. Joining me right now is Alan Strudwick. Alan, thanks for joining the show.
Thank you for having me on. It's a pleasure.
So it's interesting because you and I have known each other for a little bit now, and we were introduced by mutual friends. And it wasn't during our first initial meeting where I found out about your story. And and it all started when your wife says to me, I think you need to read his book. And I'm like, he has a book? What? So Alan, let's give the audience a little bit of your background.
When I was 16 years old, my father was very heavily involved in business. In fact, I'll just quickly tell you this. I'm actually a true Canadian, but I don't have the accent because my father, when I was 7, 8 years old, he took the whole family from Canada to Australia to make his money, to be the new frontier, all that. And he was a heavy, high entrepreneur. And so he had all these plans for me. So when I was 16, he bought me my own business. And for 2 years, I ran that through my high school years. It basically was, I think you call them candy stores. Like they're in the theater, in the cinema, where you have a candy bar or a candy.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So we bought one of those. And I ran it. My father taught me everything about business, everything from hiring staff, firing staff. That was interesting because most of the staff were my friends from school. So if I'd hired them, they loved me and they were my friends. And if I sacked them, then they didn't anymore. So it was a very interesting dynamic. But I learned everything about business and I enjoyed it. I absolutely loved it, about all the aspects of it, hard and good. And then we sold it when I graduated, and I was going to then go to university. My father had me all checked in at Harvard and other places and stuff. The thing is, I spent 1 month in university, and for me, I was very bored because I had just done business for 2 years, and now I'm hearing the theory of it. Didn't go over very well, so I quit. And then for probably the next 10, 12 years, my father and I had different businesses. We either started them or bought them or changed them around. I was totally in business. That was my focus. I just loved it. And then I became eventually a consultant. And so in business, so I have consulted for major organizations worldwide, from Sony to Toshiba, Liberexona, a few Canadian companies as well, digital way back in the early 90s, because I just love business. Absolutely. I hope that gave you a bit of a background on my business. Still am. I'm still looking at doing a new startup again in Calgary. So
You're always looking and always developing.
yeah, because when you're an entrepreneur, it's interesting. It's like an addiction. I'll give you an example of it. My father, we used to scuba dive. He taught me how to do it when I was 13, and it was before you had to be accredited or anything. And he went to an island in Fiji, but we had to get all the compressors and all the tanks and everything brought with us to this island. And it was like, he just went, this is crazy. So he talked with the Japanese owners of the island, and he set up the very first diving thing in Fiji, where it was a complete business and everything else, simply so that he didn't have to worry about getting the gear over there and doing all the trouble. That's what an entrepreneur does. If there's a problem, let's just create a business to fix it. And that's what he's like. So I grew up under that.
So I thought it was important to give just a glimpse of your background, because there's so much to your story. And your story ties in with something that keeps weaving in and out of mainstream news, of conversations, of protests. I mean, it just seems to just kind of come up and then it goes away. I'm just going to jump into it. It's like the New World Order, the conspiracy theory that people say it is. Because if you Google what New World Order is, the first thing they say is conspiracy theory. And then you meet someone like you. And I think it's important that we know that you may not agree with everything people say, but no one can take away someone's experience.
Mhm.
And that's where Alan enters.
Well, let me just start from this. I would love to just share my personal story of growing up. I mean, not only in business, but also in other spiritual type of organizations as well. And just kind of give you a history of my life. And your listeners, my main thing for them is just to understand that this is my life story. So I'm happy to share it. I didn't share it for a long time for many reasons, which people will find out soon as I start talking. But it was a true story. It was my story, and I didn't realize till probably decades later how important it was that I went through that type of a process or a journey. So maybe I'll just start out straight away first and just let everybody know. I actually got to the point through my life, and I'll come back and build that case. But in the end, I ended up working for globalists, actual being in secret meetings and everything to do with the one world orders and everything else. So I know firsthand that they're not conspiracy theories. You might define them as conspiracies, but they're conspiracy facts. Simply because I've been in the meetings, I've been around them, and I was in the organizations as a worker or a leader for the globalists for many different things. So, how about I just go back to the beginning and maybe explain the whole story? Is that okay?
Oh, I love it.
The when, as I said, with my father and moving the whole family to Australia, it didn't go too well for my mother and my father together, so they divorced. Now I moved in with my father. He was not in any way a believer of anything except um, what I would call spiritualism. He was very heavy into spiritualism, psychic things. He was very heavy into gurus and initiations and different things. Anything that was spiritual in any way that existed, even anywhere around the planet, my father was involved in it or was dedicated to it or funded things because he did become very wealthy and he would fund a lot of things. He would even bring in leaders of what was starting to become called the New Age, and he would bring leaders into Australia and they would run conferences. I'd be involved in them. But then at the same time, he would bring gurus as well that had Hindu beliefs or were following that type of thing. And they'd end up in our lounge room or living room. And I'd be sitting there, not necessarily at their feet, but I'd be sitting there listening to them. And so I had this open privilege of that. So my whole life was about spiritualism and things that were beyond the physical or beyond our body or just our souls, but beyond that, talking about spiritual stuff. Now, one of these gurus that was there took a liking to me in the sense of he believed I was a very evolved soul. In the Hinduistic belief system, they believe that a soul keeps coming back to life, back to the planet. And it's called reincarnation. And they keep coming back to it so that they can, every time they come back, they can evolve and do things better, clear karma in this lifetime that they occurred in the last lifetime, so that they can eventually evolve spiritually on the spiritual ladder of Hinduism and the Lords. Now, they believe that when you keep having your life coming back, that hopefully if you live your life well, you'll actually evolve upwards. But there are some that believe that if you do things wrong or you treat people wrong or those types of things, you actually can come back as a soul lower in the lower life forms. And so that's the basic belief of Hinduism. Well, because they believe of the different times you've been on the planet, they believed, and I was one of them, was that uh, my guru said that I had been here over 300,000 lifetimes. So I was a very evolved soul. And so therefore as far as he said, he wanted to then be given the right to be able to initiate me and be like my guru, and that would initiate me spiritually to evolve, so that I didn't have to come back to the planet again to clear any karma. I actually could then evolve into the Godhead or into an avatar type guru aspect. And so, I was 13 years old when this guru asked my parents if he could take me on as an initiate. Me, 13-year-old, 300,000 lifetimes. Hey, I'm pretty cool. This guy's going to train me. I knew nothing about anything else except this circle of spiritualism. So I thought, and then I'm going to be geared and taught to become a leader with this guru and many others around the planet. And our whole aim was to spread peace around the planet and transform lives for the better. So of course I'm in. I'm going to go for it. And so what happened is then throughout my teenage years, every year, the guru, I would go through an initiation rite. And basically that initiation rite was invoking and then yoking, that's a Hindu term, with a Hindu god or Hindu lord. and I would have them initiated into me so that I would then listen to them and hear their voices and hear their wisdom and follow them, whatever they'd instruct me to do. So throughout my teenage years, so by the time I was about 20, I think I had 7 of them in me. And I just kept evolving that way because that was the aim. Um, so then the next step was that in my early 20s, I moved from Australia to America, where a lot of the organizations were. They owned, my guru owned hospitals, universities. They were involved in heading up just many things, business consulting organizations, many personal development seminars that were known worldwide. They were the behind the scenes owners of all these things. So what they wanted to do is train me to become one of their leaders to spread the wisdom that my guru had into either a practical way, a business way, or in some way to affect the people. And of course, my heart was right. My heart intention was I want to help people. I always believed I had a heart to want to transform people to have a better life. I saw people suffering. I want them to have a better life. So here I am learning. So they put me into all the courses that existed. Everything New Age, everything spiritualism, anything to do with the occult. They made sure I was either taught by the leaders or the founders of these organizations, or I was taught by different people that were masters. But then I was to try and achieve masterhood myself. So I would become a master in all these practices.
How did you, as a 13-year-old, get chosen?
There's nothing I actually did. So that's to me, that's probably even more how I got to say this the right way. How I was drawn in,
Huh.
because it was just like he just said, your son is an evolved soul, and he wanted to be privileged enough, and he felt he was kind of, how will I say it? He was assigned by the gods to train me up, and if he didn't, then he'd be letting down his task or his destiny on the planet. And so, if anything,
So
it probably did that more. I mean, there's a lot of things that are in my book that bring all this together.
right. You're gonna tell parts of the story, and we can only get through so much, but I
Yeah,
think
exactly. And
when
it
you
all ties together in the book. When I was 11, I actually did have a vision, a futuristic vision. I was in the school ground with all my friends, and we did that stupid thing where you would hyperventilate and then squeeze someone's chest and knock them out. Not that I ever recommend you do that, but
you
it
did, eh?
we were just like, "Hey, how cool is this?" But what happened for me was that when I went unconscious, I remember having an open vision of me in the future, wearing business suits and being around the ages of 40 to 50, and training people and doing stuff, and just masses of people around me. And so when I woke up, I went through a strange experience of, hang on, what am I doing back in my 11-year-old body? Why am I back there? So when the guru started talking to me about different souls, different lifetimes, I thought, there's an answer to what happened to me. I've obviously come back to choose to be again. And then this is why everything lined up with the universe, so that the guru and everything else lined all that up. If anything, my guru, when I told him the story of that when I was 11, he said, yes, that was you and your soul coming back for a second chance, and then to have everything line up to be able to meet him, etc. And again, because I'm an evolved soul, remember, over 300,000 lifetimes. So here I was at that point, and so now I'm being trained to become a master in everything. So, and the reason was so that if anyone challenged me, I could show credentials spiritually that I'm evolved enough to be a leader. And then because it's all about hierarchy, it's all about following the pathway and being greater than someone else, and working your way up that. So I continued that right through my whole 20s until my when I was getting close to 30 years old. So at that point, I was traveling the world. I was teaching the seminars, business and personal development organizations. I was also spiritual retreats and spiritual organizations. So I had reached the kind of pinnacle. The next step was that I was going to get invited to go into the inner circle, which with my guru, which meant he had 4 to 5 young men that would travel with him full time. They'd give up their life and just travel with him. That was like the last step of evolvement spiritually that I was to go through. However, just before that, because of my position high up, there started to be some meetings that were being set up around the world. And these meetings were set up by the globalists. And the meetings, very simply, when the first one I went into was all about the New World Order. And I'm like, what's the New World Order? What are they talking about? And so they spent time explaining to myself and many other leaders, even some gurus were in the room too. And there was politicians that were leaders. There was high up business people and leaders. Some of them still exist today, but they explained the whole New World Order, but also were explaining the one world religion they wanted to attach that to, and that they wanted to have a religion that ended up that would love every religion, but it would be controlled by the globalists. And I know that there's even parts of that that exist today that people think, all religions are okay, but their aim was to promote that, to get people to the point of being deceived so that then they could control them spiritually. It's always their aim. So that's what these meetings were about, that there was going to be strategies upon strategies upon strategies. We were also told when it was going to roll out. Well, we've already started to see things worldwide now. You don't need to go very far to watch the World Economic Forum, other areas where they're talking about New World Order. They're talking about one world religion. They're talking about globalists controlling and that they need to control. So they do exist. I've met them. They exist. I've been in the meetings. And the strategies were evolved so that when they evolved their strategies, the public or the people of the planet would be ready, okay, to be able to take this on. For me, in my heart, I accepted that because I actually thought we're going to help the planet. We're going to help people finally get
Wow.
evolved enough so that we can all live in peace. We can all, kind of nirvana, which is the Hindu heaven, nirvana on earth. So I was as excited. And then I got asked to another meeting, again, because of my excitement, but also the approval from my guru of my level of initiations. However, when I got into this meeting, it wasn't about peace and love anymore, which is the whole New Age movement, about peace, about love and loving everyone. I get in this next meeting and this was the first time I actually experienced or saw evil. It was really hard to be there. And people go, what went on with it? Well, there was rituals. There was rituals. The only way I can describe them is that you actually had to get to a point where in this meeting, you were challenged that to be part of the New World Order and to be part of the high level, which was just underneath the globalists, was that you would actually have to give your soul or give your allegiance, if that's the right word, to Satan. And I was
To
like,
Satan.
yeah,
To
to
Satan.
the devil, yeah. And I was like, and then they showed a little bit of the ritual, and I'm like, that's not my style. So as I said, it was just pure evil. I saw all this stuff, and I was like, this, why am I just didn't know what was going on. Why am I here? Loving peace, loving people. And I was in one meeting, but this next meeting is now, and they regarded him as their Lord. And that's what they wanted me to do, or anyone else. There was a few others of us in the room. And of course, that choice of going to that level was like, no, this is not what I'm about. So, of course, they gave us all time and everything else to think about it, et cetera, but explaining what they want to do.
Is it like it's almost like a levels thing where if they think you're able to handle that next step, let's call it,
Hmm.
then they reveal it to you to bring you even more into
Exactly,
this group. Is that the
exactly,
idea?
exactly. And the majority of people that I knew did it. I didn't care.
Wow.
In fact, um, anyway, in the future, I'll get to that. I'll get to the next part. But then, so basically, I'm like confused what I'm going to do. And at the exact same time, whenever I was running a spiritual seminar or certain things under the organizations, we were finding bad fruit. And the way I can describe that is that I get a phone call from a lady who her husband had just walked down the driveway after one of my seminars, after a very powerful spiritual experience, and poured petrol on him and killed himself, set himself alight. Then I get a phone call from someone saying, our son is now in a psych ward. He's having psychic episodes after coming out of your thing. And I was like, hang on, what? What's all this about? And so I didn't know. I was confused. Who do I go to? I've got to go to my guru to find out. So I made a meeting with him. I went to him, and that's dicey. You don't normally go to a guru and question things because when you do, then maybe you're dropping down. And I'm still not sure what I'm supposed to be doing yet, based on those other initiation rites. And I'm like, okay, I'll go to my guru. So I get there, I start telling him, and his answer to me, which was a valid answer from his perspective, but I was starting to learn the inner circles now. His answer was that the people we were teaching, because we are bringing a higher vibration, a higher energy, we're bringing a higher spiritual aspect onto the planet. These people aren't evolved enough to take that energy. Now, that made sense to me because the Hindu faith, as I mentioned before, if you talk to the Hindus in India, if you actually really talk to a Hindu guru, their belief system is that Christians are here for their first lifetime. First lifetime. So they're very unevolved, they're very intolerant, et cetera, et cetera. That's the belief. So here I'm hearing that some people can't handle this. And so I'm thinking, oh, okay. So there's like collateral damage. But in my heart, I'm like, but that's people. These are lives that are the collateral damage. And he said, it doesn't matter. There'll be some that'll die. There'll be some that is, but we need to move forward with this to eventually get that. And it was like, it's interesting because some of those words that are even being said today by the globalists, even from Schwab and Bill Gates and other people, I'm like, that's the same stuff I was told.
People are watching this right now and they're going, come on. But you're saying that the things you're hearing goes back to even when you were in the group.
Exactly. See, this, I'm talking 25, 30 years ago. That's when the meetings were to plan all of this. We're hearing it now in, you can hear Bill Gates talk about he wants to reduce the population by 90%. Schwab wants to do it. Even the assistant under Schwab now will talk about how they're going to start to track humans. I was in a meeting where these guys virtually believe that us, like human beings, are nothing. We're like bottom feeders. They think they're gods.
You're around some dangerous people. It's sounding to
I
me
am,
like, Alan.
and I'm one of them.
And you're one of them. Okay. So something's sitting in, you could say in yourself and your spirit, something's in your head, something is sitting there going, something's wrong. I'm assuming that's what I'm getting from you. Is that right?
I mean, my head, my gut feeling, everything. It was like, oh, this is, I just couldn't do it anymore. I kept trying to work out how can I. I made the decision to call out then because I believed in things beyond the body. So I believed in a universe. I believed in, in energy and stuff. So I and also under the Hindu thing, Nirvana and Vishnu and Kali and the different gods. So I cried out and I said, I don't know if there's another God or the God or whatever, but I need help. I just can't do this. I don't know what to do. All right. So that's all I've cried out. Simple. And I also did put out, I wanted a personal God to answer me, and which is really strange. Because I didn't feel, anyway, I just did. So I'm one day running a seminar, a spiritual leadership retreat, and I'm doing an exercise. It was kind of like called guided imagery. Close your eyes, you guide people. I was guiding all the people through this vision. Anyway, I looked over to my right, and instantly is an open vision in the room. It's not me thinking about it. I'm not dreaming. It was live. And when I looked over, I saw the figure of God right there on my right-hand side. I saw the figure of God, and it was like I could see the outline. I could see the light was extreme. The only way I could describe it then was like the power that was coming off him was just almost unbearable. I almost felt like I had to hit my knees on the ground, but I didn't. And then, but on the right-hand side of him, Jesus was there. Jesus was in an open vision, and he starts to talk to me, and I'm like, and I'm kind of like, is this the Hindu Jesus? Is this the Jesus of the Bible? Is this the Jesus of the Christians? Who is this? Like, it could be, because we believed in Jesus. We didn't believe in Jesus in the sense of him being the one that was a savior and et cetera, like the Bible talks about. We believed him as another avatar, another prophet, or whatever, another wise man that came to the planet. So here he is talking to me, and I can see him like he's a figure. There's light around him, but I could see the figure as a man. And he asked me to put my hands out. So I put my hands out, and light just left his hands and went straight into my hands. And when it did, he said these words. He said, "You will from now on lay hands on my people, and you will heal them." Now, in everything I was in before, we used to pray prayers of healing. We used to see people get healed. We used to see that. But he was now saying, you're going to, from now on, do it for me. You're not going to do it from and he said this, from my enemy. You're now going to do it for me. And I'm like, wow, okay, okay. And anyway, so, and again, I don't know why, just something in my spirit knew it was the real Jesus. I'm now like, what do I do with that? What do I do with that? And I then felt like I needed to go to a church. Now I want to explain this to it now, because he'd be like, me go to a church? Why would I want to go to a church? Remember that my belief system under my guru was that Christians that were here for their first lifetime, first. Okay, number one, first time, don't know
Right.
anything spiritually.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking, I'm going to go to the church, and at some point when the vibration's right, the universe shifts, I'm going to go up front, and I'm going to now get a chance to teach all these people the truth and how to evolve them. You also remember, and this is a good point to add this in quickly here. One of the things I forgot to tell you was about one of those other meetings with the globalists. One of the strategies that I was assigned to do was to wean Christians away from their faith and away from the deity of Jesus and away from whatever the Bible said about Jesus. My job strategy was to wean them away from that and bring them to more truth.
Wait, I'm listening to this and I'm going, that was a specific goal.
Hmm. Yep. And I was in charge of the specific strategy and the marketing of that, and to do that.
Wow.
But we were doing it to help them. We thought
Of course.
they needed to spiritually evolve because they're getting hurt in this new vibration. And so, yeah.
On it, Alan, like I'm sitting here and I'm like, I'm thinking, you are a successful businessman. You're a normal guy. And all of this stuff that you're opening up to me, I'm sitting here going, we're told that this is a conspiracy theory. From your experience, and I just want to stop before moving forward. When
Sure.
you were in this,
Hmm.
are you one is this one facet of it? Like you're kind of on the spiritual side of it. Do they have different I don't know what you would call it, channels, groups within the group? Is
Oh,
that
yeah. Yeah. I mean, and look, I'm telling you something that was happening 25, 30 years ago. This has been happening and I was in meetings where we were told who started all this stuff, the globalists back in the late 1800s and stuff. We were taught in different educations because remember, we all thought this was the right thing to do. So, but yes, many, look, the bottom line of when they started all of this, and as I said, I came in much later, was to take over the world. And they want to do that, right? They want a one world order. They, look, 50% of them have probably done the ritual, and another 50% were like me, truly wanting to help and do the right thing, think they're doing the right thing. But that's deception. So, yes, every area, they went from every sphere of the world, politics, business, media, education, family, everywhere. It was planned to go through every area of life, so that they could then eventually take control.
so you go through this spiritual moment, then
Mhm.
you go to the church. And like what are the next steps of this? Because I'm thinking Alan is changing a little bit. Alan's questioning everything.
Oh yeah, everything. I'm a mess. I'm like, what is going on? So I thought maybe this was the what was happening. The universe was shifting me into this direction. So I ended up getting into the church, but I got there late, so I'm up like second row, and I'm waiting and I'm waiting and waiting and just waiting for whenever this shift's going to come. But what was happening while I was waiting is that the guy who was up front, the pastor preacher, he started quoting scriptures. But when he was quoting them, he said, "This is Jesus talking." All right, and I'm like, "Oh, okay. Well, I just met the guy. I just met this Jesus. So I'm wondering what this is about." And and just for the sake of time, basically, all I was hearing this Jesus say was that, "Come to me, those that are burdened and heavy, and if you come to me, my yoke will be easy and the burden will be light, and you can learn from me." Now, let me explain how important that was for me. Yoking is a Hindu term. It means you yoke with God, so they run your life. I had like, I don't know, I still don't know the exact number, but I had at least 15, 16 Hindu lords running my life that I followed and had them control me. So here I'm hearing him say he's a lord, and his yoke is easy. My whole experience with all of my Hindu lords that were inside of me through those initiation rites was tough. Under the guise that your life has to be tough to go through karma to release, and then you evolve. And so everything was tough, and it was hard, and burdens were heavy, and not a lot of peace or love at all, really, when you're really that high up in the high circle with it. This Lord sounds cool. He sounds okay because he's not heavy, he's not hard. So I thought, all right, I'm going to check him out. But the preacher then said, anyone who wants to come out to ask this Jesus into your heart, come on out. I didn't know that that was a normal Christian thing or anything to do with the Christian salvation or their process.
Come
I
to the
didn't.
front of the stage, or is that what you
Yeah,
meant by
come out
come?
there, and come out in the front, and we'll say a prayer to ask this Jesus in your heart. And I'm like, okay. So my decision was, all right, I'm going to go out front. I'm going to say whatever, a prayer, whatever, because I'm going to ask this Jesus to come in my heart so I can check him out. So I bought a Bible. I tried to find one that I could read and understand. And I made a decision that for 12 months, while I was still traveling the world, I'm still doing spiritual retreats, I'm still doing courses, I'm still taking in Hindu practices into businesses in covert ways. I'm still doing it all. I'm still leading certain organizations. I'm still fighting Christians to come across. I'm still doing it all. But every time I needed something, anytime I needed something financially, physically, mentally, my health, uh, everything spiritually, anytime I needed something, I thought, I'm going to find out what Jesus said. And so I found out what he told me to do. So I do it. And I'd have a miracle happen. Then I'd have another miracle happen. Throughout that whole 12 months, this Lord who said his yoke would be easy, and I yoked with him. I just followed him. I had so much peace and so much love that I hadn't had before, remember? And even when I got high enough, it wasn't there anymore. But the peace and the love and the victories and everything was so much better than before. Wasn't saying the other stuff was at that time was necessarily wrong or anything else. This was better. It was better.
You felt better.
Oh,
You were
everything.
lighter.
My life was better. Tragedy would come, bang. I'd go to Jesus and he'd say, leave, put it at my feet, or do this, and I will exalt you, and I'll take it away from him, and it would be gone, just gone.
And you're still continuing with the group, with
Yeah,
the globalist movement.
totally.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
then the more that, and I don't have a spirit of stupidity. If it's good and it works well, I'm going to keep doing it. I'm going to keep doing it. So I'm like, this is the best thing. We all believe that there's many gods and many ways to God, right? So here I'm going, I found a fantastic way. So I'm like, I run to my guru. I fly all the way across the world, get to my guru and say, this is it. This Jesus guy is it. So I want to follow this one. My guru threw me out of the organization. He hated
Wait,
everything.
no conversation, thrown out, done.
Yells at me, yells that I've become evil. And we didn't really believe too much in evil, but yells at me that I've become evil, sends faxes all around to all the organizations I was either leading or part of or helping all around the world that they have to stay away from me. Because if they don't, that I'd lost all my initiation rites, I'd lost all my evolving of soul, I'd lost it all.
So I'm assuming that your world is all of that and your connections are all of that. So when you're saying he cut you out, does everyone follow suit and they don't
Oh yeah.
interact with you
Oh
anymore?
yeah. We're seeing it even now. I've seen politicians speak up against the Great Reset, and then 2 weeks later they're speaking for it. And I know a certain politician that did that, and I know it. But I know that because I was around them. So they were either threatened or bribed or whatever to change the thing. And you can't blame especially if they're threatened. It's scary at the top. That's very, as I said, love and peace disappeared. Then I found out the truth of what they were wanting to do, and it's a scary thing when you meet those guys and women. They've all done the initiation right, and they do display themselves evil. It's not good up being that high in that sense, but there is a plan, and they're going to do it in every facet, including religions.
So when did you decide to write the book? Because let's talk I'm almost through your book. I find it fascinating. It's incredible. It ties everything together. Um, was that always on your heart, or were you, because you said at the start of this that you weren't going to talk about your experience?
Well, no, because I'm still a loving person. I still love people. I still want to transform people. So I don't run around hate. I'm still someone that loves people. So at that end of the year, it's like I got a choice. What am I going to do? And so my choice was number one, to forgive them all, and number two was that all right, I'm going to follow Jesus until such time I find a better one. Okay, because that still was my philosophy. I'll follow this new Lord because he's good until if there's a better one. Now 25, 30 years later, there's been no better one. I just need to confess that. Uh, there just hasn't been. He's and people don't like. They get mad at me when I tell them my life's fairy tale. It doesn't mean I haven't had tragedies, but with everything that, like, why would someone like me give everything up and everything up? They take everything away from you. Why would I give everything up and my hierarchy and look, the privileges I was given in certain areas in the world and stuff? And it was like, why would I give all that up to become a Christian?
You understand that
Right.
people are like,
Yeah.
okay, this guy's got quite the story. But what would you tell those people that are like, big question mark here? What is this?
Well, twofold. One, if they want to contact me and ask me questions, I do that.
Wow.
I'm more than happy to answer questions because I feel that that's part of my job. If I've been someone who's been in both sides and both camps, if we can call it that way, globalists over here, and now in a totally different realm of love and joy and peace and things, then it's like I've got answers that other people won't have. I'm not someone who's just dabbled in New Age or did New Age and then left it. I got that. I still think it's a privilege that I got to see the high up stuff and got to see about globalists and stuff. I'm tying back to something else here quickly. In the beginning, I didn't go near my book because I was afraid. I mean, I was afraid that I could get killed because of what I knew and because of where I'd been. But and I prayed. And, there was some things that I did. I ran a lot of meetings in the early days, but I had death threats. I had people trying to kill me, trying to run up with knives and all sorts of different things. Death threats against my family. And so I got scared. I'll be admitted, I got a bit scared, and I was like, "Ooh, I'm just going to lay low for a while." And it wasn't really until about 10, well, maybe 15 years ago, a very well-known friend of mine in the Christian circle said, "Why don't you tell your testimony?" I said, "Oh, it's all whatever." And he said, "No. There's gonna be a time where this is going to be necessary. So start to write it now." So that was 15 years ago. It took about 4 or 5 years of me getting just my stuff down, and then the next probably 4 or 5 years was the editing of it, because we did not want to do something that was just another book slamming other people. It's not. I can't do that. I needed to explain the stories. But it wasn't until the globalists started to initiate again and start getting out there, and we're starting to see the things from COVID. That was one of their plans, this plan, all these little plans. And I'm like, okay, now's why the book needs to be coming out.
Wait a second. So you're saying that when what we're in right now, the situation, the whole thing, like we don't need to pinpoint one thing,
No.
but you're looking at it from your perspective from years ago, and you can actually follow the course and go, "Oh, yeah, this makes sense."
Oh, yeah, totally. I mean, everywhere I'm seeing, there's not just one or two things. I mean, look,
You're
even,
looking at me like, "Heather, yes."
yeah, yeah, like even the World Economic Forum with Schwab, when he talks about, he's even admitted it on, like, they're not hiding anymore. He even admitted the young training program. I was involved, not in that, but if I had done the initiation right in the end, I would have been put into a program. I was in that late 20s, that young group. Schwab has already admitted that Trudeau was in the group. The French Prime Minister was in the group. The New Zealand Prime Minister was in the group. They're proud that these guys were in that group. I didn't end up in that group. And I'm very happy that I didn't, because of what I would have had to be at that point. They've been planned and groomed in this. As I said, even Schwab came out himself and said about our own Canadian government that there's 50% of them are part of his group, part of his One World Order group. They didn't start they didn't start last week.
Why are people so quick to dismiss this? Even though, and what you're saying, I remember the story. I can hear him saying it. I came across that story, and it
Mhm.
wasn't some random website that I found it on, right? It's out in the open. So why are certain types of people so quick to dismiss it? Is it a head in the sand thing? Is it they don't want to even think that the world could be like that? Like, what is it?
Yes, yes, and yes. Oh,
Yeah.
some people, and I don't blame them. Some people can't. It's too frightening to think that this is happening. Yes, head in the sand. Two, they could be from a country where the media is so controlled nothing gets through, or they're in that country watching the media, that media is always tainted to suit the narrative of that country. And I'm speaking exactly of Australia, because I lived there for so long. My wife is Australian, almost Canadian. Um,
We're gonna get her a shirt.
yeah, this is her home. She loves Canada. And now, if they believe that this is actually what's going to happen, because the media has tainted it, as I was saying, in Australia, I read the Australian main media. I can handle reading because I understand the deception. I was taught how to change narratives. I was taught as a master in certain psychological techniques, so that how we could create a narrative that actually could anchor in a whole room of 1,000 people to do something when you said a certain word. It's freaky stuff. But I've been there, I've used it. I'm not happy about some of the techniques I've used, but it is the narrative of how you use words, and you know that in media more than anyone else. It's all planned. So a country like Australia, you don't have just the story. The story's got the narrative added to it and flavor to it like leaven, and it goes through. I read them sometimes. I just start laughing and going, for me, this is the most basic, dumbest thing that is being said. But then I talk to Australians, and they go, oh, they're looking after us. Oh, how amazing this is. This is fantastic. Oh, no, it's not. It's not COVID. It's not the vaccine. It's not this. It's this. And look what they're doing. And I'm like, I already know what they're doing and why they're doing it. So I'm trying it from as best perspective as I can to help people and to expose things. But at the same time, some are just seriously, some are too afraid.
So you have, feel like I could talk to you for 5 hours, 6 hours, and go like, "Okay, now let's talk about the
Anything I could.
experiences." And I did ask you at one point before we started this, and I'm like, "Who's in the group now?" And you will not talk about that. That's the one thing yeah.
No, and I met some of them. Some of them are still around today and doing what they're doing. I I know some direct from Globus. And when I say I know of them, or they were talking to us, or they were teaching us, or I shook a hand, or whatever I did. Of course, they're recruiting when they do those meetings, the high up, that last meeting. It's like here or you're out kind of thing. So, um, and then there's other people that are next level down, especially in areas of Hollywood and actors. We used to use, I won't name them either, but we used actors. When I finally realized what we were doing, I thought, how dumb is this? That we will get actors who are paid 20, 30 million dollars to act. They're not telling the truth. They're acting, and they're good at acting. That's why they're paid a lot of money. We would get the biggies, and we would use them to propaganda what we were doing.
I have so many more questions, which I feel like I'm probably going to bring you back on. I feel like I'm going to get a lot of emails.
And I have no problem coming back on, whatever you
Thank
wanted
you.
to do. And anyway, I don't even mind answering once we did a second part, even because a lot of people want to know specifics about what practices are good, what are not good, et cetera, et cetera. They even wanting to know more about my life. What do I do now? How am I doing it? How do I navigate it? And that's why I don't mind people asking me questions. But I want your audience to know one thing, one major thing, is that my life from the time I was born to the time now, I've always wanted to help people. And my challenge to people, or not a challenge, but my offer to people is that, hey, it's not about believing me ultimately, because if you believe me and I convince you a certain way, someone else is going to come along who's more intelligent than me, and they're going to convince you the other way. I don't want that for you. I want for you what I did. And that's what I would offer you. If you're not sure of anything, so what? Why don't you do what I did? I simply asked Jesus, come into my heart and show me.
So let's talk about your book
Okay.
because
I've got to say this first. When you're reading my book, it has been written in a way that you start and you hear all my life, my credentials, who I was trained with, what like in what I was trained in. You will see it. And some of those things, some people go, oh, but are you saying that's wrong? I want you to read the book. Read it from the beginning to the end. It was actually designed for people who don't have a faith to read it, to
okay.
understand my spiritual journey. In fact, the very beginning title was Spiritual Evolution. It was about my evolution. It's progressed and gotten better to the point it's now called an authentic awakening, because that's what happened to me. It was very authentic. But basically, that's what I'm suggesting you do. because if you glance, there'll be some things in that book that you're going to go and it might trigger something in you. And it's not my intention. My intention is for you to read the whole book. And because in the end, there's some very touchy, prickly subjects that some people don't like. I didn't like those subjects either, except I knew I needed to put them in to explain from my experience of how things like that work. Because I've actually studied from the masters, not just read it and went and did it.
Hmm. Hmm. I
I
think
think
that's the important part about this is that you were so high up there, you were teaching it. So, if someone wants to find out about your book, how can we get them a copy?
all right, for as far as an ebook or a digital PDF,
Yeah, yeah.
you just send it to my email and my direct email, and I'm
And we'll
fine
put
with
it
that.
below, just if you could say it, and then we'll put
Yeah,
it below.
yeah. Alan, ALAN, at Alan Strudwick Ministries.com. So it's Alan Strudwick Ministries.com.
Authentic Awakening, Dismantling the New Age Counterfeit. This man has walked the walk, and I'm sure some of you are questioning it still. So it's amazing that you're opening up your email to answer their questions. Thank you for sharing your journey with us.
Thank you. Thank you for being bold enough to have me on.